Welcome to the realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Enjoy listening. Roderick Fulton was an ordinary man who made his living as a painter. Yet he was unaware that the day ahead would mark a turning point in his life. As usual, he woke up early in the morning, stretching and preparing for another mundane day of work. His phone buzzed with a notification, pulling his attention. It was a message from his best friend. "Call me urgently." Roderick wasted no time and dialed the number. As soon as his friend picked up, he began speaking rapidly. "Roderick, buddy, we're expecting guests from another realm. I've arranged an empty house for them, but the place is in terrible condition. Can you go to the location I sent you and start working on it today?" Roderick agreed without hesitation. He was a trustworthy man and always ready to help, especially for his closest friend. His friend was an astrophysicist by profession, and it wasn't uncommon for him to host intergalactic visitors. This time, though, it seemed different. Arriving at the house, Roderick immediately assessed the situation. It was clear that the house needed more than just a coat of paint. It required a thorough cleaning. Without wasting time, he got to work. Though painting was his specialty, Roderick didn't mind getting his hands dirty when necessary. He dipped his brush into the red paint, preparing to apply the first coat to the wall. Just as he was about to start, a sudden knock at the door broke his concentration. Raising an eyebrow, he set the brush down and walked toward the door. Opening it, he was met with a strikingly elegant woman. Yet, there was something peculiar about her, a subtle but undeniable aura of otherworldliness. Her long hair cascaded like a waterfall, and her eyes sparkled like a starlit night. "Hello," she said softly, bowing her head slightly. "I'm Nixta. It seems I've arrived a little early. I apologize for any inconvenience. Unforeseen circumstances brought me here a day ahead of schedule." Roderick, momentarily taken aback, quickly composed himself and offered a warm smile. "Oh, that's no problem at all. Please come in. I'm still working on getting the place ready, but it shouldn't take too long." Nixta stepped inside, her movements graceful yet deliberate. She surveyed the room with an appreciative look. "It's good you found someone skilled to handle this house," she said, her voice melodic. "Everything looks so meticulous." Roderick chuckled lightly as he returned to his work. "That's what I do. But I have to admit, your arrival was unexpected. My friend didn't tell me much about you. How long are you planning to stay?" Nixta turned her gaze to the window, a brief silence hanging between them. Then, with a faint smile, she replied, "Perhaps for a while. Being here is more important to me than you might realize." Her words lingered in Roderick's mind as he continued painting. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her visit than met the eye. As he worked, he noticed Nixta's gaze frequently drifting toward him, her presence both distracting and captivating. Breaking the silence, she asked, "Are your arms this muscular from painting?" Roderick paused, laughing softly. "Partly, I suppose. I used to work out regularly, but a few years ago, I decided to focus on a job that pays the bills. You know, life's little compromises." Their conversation flowed naturally after that, oscillating between light-hearted banter and deeper, more reflective moments. Roderick shared stories about his work, his past hobbies, and the simplicity of his life. Nixta listened attentively, occasionally starting to speak about her own world, though she often stopped short, as if holding something back. As evening approached, Nixta hesitated before making an unusual request. "I think I'll be staying here tonight. But, truthfully, I get a bit nervous when I'm alone. Would it be all right if you stayed here as well?" Caught off guard, Roderick considered her words. "I guess I'll need to check with my friend first," he said, pulling out his phone. After a quick conversation, he received the go-ahead. Turning back to Nixta, he nodded. "Looks like I can stay." Nixta's smile widened, her eyes twinkling mischievously. "Thank you. By the way, with someone as skilled as you here, I almost wish you could paint me too." Her playful comment left Roderick momentarily flustered. Unsure of how to respond, he simply laughed, though her presence was beginning to stir emotions in him he couldn't quite explain. As night fell, Roderick finished his work and tidied up the space. Exhausted, he sank into a worn-out sofa. Nixta joined him shortly after, her proximity setting his nerves alight. Would you like a massage? You've worked hard today, she offered, not waiting for his answer before gently meeting his arms. The unexpected gesture left Roderick momentarily speechless, but as her hands worked away the tension, he found himself relaxing. Her touch was soothing, and he felt an inexplicable bond forming. Without thinking, he leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on her lips. Startled but not displeased, Nixta pulled back slightly, her gaze locking with his. You just kissed an alien, she whispered, a hint of amusement in her voice. I hope you don't have a girlfriend or wife waiting for you back home. Roderick shook his head. No, Nixta. From the moment I saw you, I felt something special. I know you feel it too. Their connection deepened as the night wore on, their shared moments filled with passion and vulnerability. But as the first light of dawn crept into the room, a shadow of sadness crossed Nixta's face. Roderick, she began, her voice heavy with emotion. I never expected to feel this way about a human, but we belong to different worlds. We'll never truly be able to be together. For both our sakes, we must part ways now. Though her words pierced his heart, Roderick knew she was right. He reached out, gently cupping her face. You're right, Nixta. But promise me one thing. If you ever come back to Earth, let me know. Don't leave me in the dark. I promise, she said, her voice trembling. Their final kiss was filled with unspoken words and unfulfilled dreams. When they pulled away, tears streaked Nixta's face, but her smile carried a glimmer of hope. Roderick turned to leave, his steps heavy as if the weight of the universe rested on his shoulders. Just as his hand reached for the doorknob, a gentle yet firm grip wrapped around his arm. He turned, surprised to see Nixta standing there, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Wait, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Before Roderick could respond, she pulled him back inside, closing the door behind them. Without a word, she leaned up and kissed him once more, a kiss that was deeper and more desperate than before. It spoke of longing, confusion, and a fleeting hope that neither dared to voice. Their lips parted, and Nixta rested her forehead against his. I'm not ready to say goodbye yet, she admitted, her voice trembling. Roderick nodded, pulling her into a warm embrace. Then don't, he whispered. They spent the night talking, sitting close on the couch, as if any distance between them would shatter the fragile bond they'd built. Nixta opened up about her life, her world, and the aching loneliness that brought her to Earth time and time again. In my world, she said, her gaze distant, we don't form bonds like you do here. Everything is calculated, logical, but it's empty. I've always felt like something was missing, like I was a fragment searching for the rest of myself. Coming here, being with you, it's the first time I've felt whole. Her confession left Roderick silent for a moment. He reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. You're not alone anymore, Nixta. Even if our time together is short, it's real. That's all that matters. Her eyes softened, and she smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her entire face. They continued talking until her voice grew quieter, her words slower. Eventually, she leaned against Roderick, her breathing steadying as she drifted into sleep in his arms. Roderick watched her for a long time, taking in every detail of her face, every nuance of her peaceful expression. He didn't want to disturb her, but he knew morning would come too soon. As the first light of dawn crept into the room, Roderick carefully slipped out from beneath Nixta, ensuring she stayed undisturbed. He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Then he retrieved a piece of paper and pen from his bag, his hands steady despite the ache in his chest. He began to write. Nixta, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I want to leave, but because I must. You've brought something into my life that I didn't even know was missing. A sense of wonder, of connection, of love that transcends anything I've known. For that, I will always be grateful. Last night, you told me about the emptiness you've felt, the void you've carried. I want you to know that you've filled a void in me, too. Even in this short time, you've shown me the kind of beauty and depth that most people spend their whole lives searching for. You're extraordinary, Nixta. Not because you come from another world, but because of who you are. I wish I could promise you that we'd meet again, But life doesn't always work that way. So instead, I'll promise you this. No matter where I am or what I'm doing, a part of me will always be with you. And if our paths ever cross again, I'll be waiting with open arms and an open heart. Until then, live fully, love deeply, and never doubt the impact you've had on this simple painter's life. You'll always be my brightest star. Forever yours, Roderick. Roderick folded the letter and placed it gently on the table beside Nixta. He took one last look at her sleeping form, a bittersweet smile gracing his lips, before quietly slipping out the door. The crisp morning air hit his face as he stepped outside, yet it did nothing to clear the storm in his mind. His steps were slow and hesitant, his feet dragging as if each step carried him farther from something irreplaceable. The streets were eerily quiet, the world not yet fully awake. It matched the emptiness gnawing at him inside. By the time he reached his small apartment, the silence had become unbearable. The door clicked shut behind him, and he stood in the dimly lit room, staring at nothing in particular. The once familiar space now felt foreign, as though he had stepped into someone else's life. Roderick moved mechanically, his body on autopilot. He placed his keys on the counter, shrugged off his jacket, and collapsed onto the worn-out couch. His eyes drifted to the window, where the sun was beginning its ascent. It painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, colors that once inspired him as a painter, but now only deepened his sense of loss. He ran a hand through his hair, letting out a heavy sigh. What was he supposed to do now? He'd spent so long focusing on the simplicity of his life, work, routine, a quiet existence. But after Nixta, it all felt so insignificant. Memories of the night flooded his mind. Her laughter, her warmth, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her world. He closed his eyes, but the images only grew more vivid. Unable to sit still, Roderick got up and began pacing the room. His thoughts raced, his emotions a whirlwind he couldn't contain. Should he go back to the house? Wait for her to wake up? Or would that make it harder for both of them? His eyes fell on his collection of paints and brushes, neatly arranged on a shelf. An idea struck him, a desperate attempt to channel the overwhelming feelings inside. He grabbed a canvas, set it on the easel, and began to paint. The strokes were bold and chaotic at first, driven by the turmoil in his heart. But as the image took shape, it became something softer, more deliberate. He painted Nixta, not just her face, but the essence of her, the depth in her eyes, the way she carried herself, the spark of otherworldly magic she brought into his life. Hours passed, and the room was filled with the scent of paint and the faint sound of his brush against the canvas. When he finally stepped back, his hands were trembling, but he felt a strange sense of relief. The painting wasn't perfect, it could never truly capture her, but it was something, a piece of her he could hold on to. Roderick slumped into the chair, staring at the painting. "What now?" he whispered to the empty room. As if in response, his phone buzzed on the table. He reached for it, his heart leaping for a moment, only to find it was a message from his friend, the same friend who had sent him to prepare the house. "Roderick, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. I'll be dropping by the house later to meet our guest. Let me know if you need anything." Roderick stared at the message, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Should he tell his friend the truth? That their guest wasn't just some stranger, but someone who had shaken his entire world? Or should he keep it to himself, a secret too precious to share? He didn't reply. Instead, he sat there, letting the quiet fill the space around him. The painting stood as a silent witness to the night that had changed everything. For now, all he could do was wait. Wait to see if Nixta would find her way back to him, or if she would remain a fleeting memory, a star that burned brightly before disappearing into the vastness of the universe. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, Roderick made a silent vow. No matter what happened, he would keep living, keep painting, and keep looking up at the stars, hoping to catch a glimpse of her light again. And maybe, just maybe, that hope would be enough to carry him forward.